What's going on, Mongs? It's me, Semi-Mong, and today we're back on Crowfall with my first proper Siege experience. Now, before we continue further into this video, some of this footage is a bit choppy because of just the server stability with current pre-alpha, the amount of players that were actually around. Some of it does drop to about 25 FPS, 30 FPS, so I am sorry in advance. To start it all off, of course, Sieges have been in the game for a while now, but I've never really been in a proper Siege experience with this many people. We're currently in the Chaos Faction hub, and there's so many people that I think they're all a part of the same Russian guild, because they all say 4G, a lot of them have the same guild icon, and then we've got a couple of other players that are in a separate guild, but there's at least 30 people here. It's absolutely insane. I've never seen so many people on the same faction just in the same area, let alone gearing up and just getting ready to go take on a keep. So yeah, I decided just to record this. I wasn't actually a part of any of the guilds or any of the groups that were trying to siege the keep, but I did decide to tag along and record it just to see if I could get any footage. And once again, I'm just amazed by the amount of people here. And then of course the siege starts to go ahead and everyone phases through the portal. It was so cool just seeing everyone just run towards the same portal to zone into the next area. And then of course everyone needed to gather up again, so we all sat in the next area waiting for everyone to zone through. And then the march began, the march towards the siege area and the keep began. But because everyone was in the same group, I sort of fell behind. Of course you can get group speed buffs and whatnot, and me being a solo polo, being on my own, I was left behind in the wilderness, and it eventually got to the point of where no one was running with me and I was just on my own. So I did have to take that short trip alone to the final portal, but then we got to the final portal and phased through, and once again everyone was gathering up and getting ready before we took on the second march towards the keep, towards the castle, to actually start the siege. And of course, typically, it wasn't quite as far as a run this time, but everyone else had a speed buff and I was left on my own. But yeah, we got to the keep, and it was just a case of waiting for the siege window to open up so we could actually go and attack and just try and take over the castle. Now, I didn't know if there was going to be anyone on the opposing factions trying to defend the keep. I knew that there was siege vehicles involved in this sort of like in-game activity, but I didn't know how it all worked. And it did turn out that there was some opposing faction members actually trying to defend the keep and trying to just keep reign for themselves, pretty much. So before I get into when the siege actually started, just a quick note: footage may be a little choppy, maybe a little cut up. I'm not sure on the recollection of how everything went down, but when the siege window started to open up, this is when we started to see the first sort of siege weapons pop up. The catapults came up from their little wooden pods, and then you had catapults on the the castle walls, which the opposing faction could use to rain siege weapons or siege fire, catapult arrows, whatever it was, down onto us trying to overtake. But I don't know if you had to build these catapults as the attacking team, or whether they just popped up like they did on the walls for the castle, or whether the opposing team actually had to build the catapults. But there was areas for the catapults to pop up. Whether the opposing faction and our faction had to do some sort of process to actually make them come up, or whether just because the siege window opened up, that's when they appear for use. I'm not quite sure, but the catapults proved rather deadly. Of course, with a siege, your main goal is to break into the castle and to kill the tree of life in the center. And to first do that, because we don't own the fort, we don't own the castle, we can't just go up to the gate and just stroll on in. We have to actually break a wall. So I believe this is what the siege catapults and the siege vehicles are mainly used for, is trying to break down the walls. But I just remember people dying, literally just dropping one by one, and then I took my luck and tried to actually jump into a catapult, and I just got absolutely mowed down and then died, unfortunately. Now, to respawn was quite a fair bit away, so I did take the trip. I did fly back to our nearest player faction controlled the fort town area to revive, and then run back to the castle, at which point it turned less of a catapult versus catapult fight into actually a giant group fight. You saw a nice big group of opposing faction members come out of the castle and try and just take us on. We had all of the tanks at the front, we had like assassin DPS trying to like swerve round and get behind enemy ranks, where you had all of the healers in the back lines along with the range DPS just healing, chucking down arrows and just like fire spells and everything. At some points it did look really cool. It is just a shame that a bit of the stability wasn't there and we had a few lost frames, but it did look so cool just seeing players trying to go at it, because it wasn't just like a giant like sesh, like it wasn't just everyone running at each other. It was more of a sort of like army tactical strategic thing. We had like a lot of people weren't fighting. Of course, you had the ranged DPS chucking in their AoE spells, but then you had the tanks like edging closer, trying to get a shot off, backing up. It was so cool. I don't know how to explain it. It's definitely something to experience in Crowfall if you haven't already, and definitely one of the selling points of the game is these giant strategic siege fights. Like, I just don't know how to explain it. It's sort of you had to be there, it had to be a first-hand experience. Of course, I wasn't doing much attacking, I was just taking on the role of a cameraman, but some of the scenes did look really epic. Now, once again, my sort of a memory of how all of this went down, this is pre-recorded unfortunately, so I'm gonna have to try and edit it together as best I can, is a bit dodgy. But at some point there was a separate fight sort of broke off to the southwest of the castle when I was with the main bunch, the main guild that was trying to just storm the front gates, and they actually, the second group on the other side of the castle actually managed to get a wall down. So you can just attack the walls as well, you don't have to use the siege vehicles. If there's a number of you can just go up and start like meleeing the walls, and it will slowly wear down the wall. And we managed to break one of the walls, and of course this is where the first encounter started, where everyone ran in and just tried to take over the castle. Now, the first run into the big castle, the big siege, was a bit dire, and I believe it was the only shot at getting to the main tree of life that we actually had. But when we got into the main center, the main courtyard of the castle, it was just an absolute bloodbath. We had members of the opposite faction die in, we had members of our faction die in. For the main part, our sort of huddled group stayed together like a giant turtle shell and managed to push through to the tree of life. But our 10 ranger guards in that area absolutely mowed down loads of us, and then we eventually got to the tree of life, started to attack it a little bit, but then there was more guards in that main courtyard, that main top area where the tree of life is. We had opposing faction members come in, and at one point it was just us in there with the guards, and then I don't know what happened because people started dropping, and then I died again at the tree of life, and from my deathbed all I could see was a ton of opposing faction members overtake the room that we were just in. And then yeah, the revolution sort of died down from there. I was dead on the ground, the buddy I'd group up with was dead on the ground, and I couldn't see actually any of our faction members still in the main courtyard room, that main room with the tree of life. So I once again decided to respawn. See, I just thought it ended there. You know, it was at a null end. We had attempted to get into the courtyard, attempted to kill the tree of life. It was looking good, but unfortunately it didn't pan out. Decided to respawn, come back, try to be a little bit greedy, a little bit cheeky, and take some of the loot of the members that had died in the first sort of area that we broke into and broke the wall. But then I don't know what the word is, predictably, a load of the opposing faction members came and just sort of cleared up everyone that was around on the outside of the castle, and that sort of ended my siege experience there. But as I said, it is definitely something to experience, being a part of that big group, trying to take over the castle, and just the general 40 versus 40, 30 versus 30, I don't know how many players it was, but just that whole experience with the siege vehicles and everything, just storming, running as a giant army, it was definitely something that was enjoyable. So if you haven't already, be sure to pick up Crowfall, check it out for yourself, get involved in these siege windows, and of course, thank you for all of the support. Leave a like down below if you've enjoyed. Be sure to get involved in the comment section, let me know what you think of these siege experiences. Once again, I'm sorry for the choppy footage, and of course be sure to check out the description for links to my game on Amazon and Redbubble stores for gamer gifts of all types and all ages. But yeah, thanks for all of the support, and I shall see you in the next video.